For a decade, the Libyan Muslim Brotherhood and the Al-Qaeda Libyan Islamic fighting groups tried to overthrow Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi with British MI6 support. Ambassador Christopher Stevens, with State Department support, pressured Gaddafi to release jihadis from prison, who then immediately organized and launched a revolution against him. This has never been explained. On 17 February 2011, the Obama administration then gave the green light to the Libyan revolt, which began and was supported by the European Union and NATO. The U.S. gave official support to Muslim Brotherhood and Al-Qaeda militias, and in March 2011, Chris Stevens managed the weapons flow from Qatar to Libyan Al-Qaeda militias. On 20 October 2011, Gaddafi was killed, and the Transitional National Council took over. Then, from January to September 2012, security conditions in Bengazi deteriorated drastically, and Ansar al-Sharia, allied with al-Qaeda, attacked Western and U.S. interests. During this period, Stevens repeatedly requested more security, but all requests were denied by Hillary Clinton, the Secretary of State, even after specific intelligence warning of an imminent attack was received in late August 2012 from a trusted local source. Another idiotic decision, from November 2011 through December 2012, was when Christy Rogers, the wife of the HPSCI chairman Mike Rogers and president and CEO of Aegis Defense Services LLC, major Democratic donors, won the large global security contract from the State Department and controlled the security for Bengazi. However, in one of the most insane decisions in recent history, they subcontracted the security of the CIA compound to the 17 February Martyrs Brigade, an affiliate of Al-Qaeda. From January through September 2012, the CIA base of operations, Bengazi, called the Annex, was tasked with the recovery of Gaddafi's looted weapons, especially surface-to-air missiles that fell into terrorist hands. The CIA previously had managed weapons collection and shipment on Libyan ships from Bengazi to Turkish ports for overland delivery to the terrorists in Syria. On 10 September 2012, Ambassador Stevens traveled from Tripoli to Bengazi with only 5 DSS officers and NSA officer Sean Smith, and they arrived in Bengazi from The Hague. On 11 September 2012, Ansar al-Sharia had set up a blockade cordoned around the Special Mission neighborhood, and that evening Turkish Consul General Ali Seytakin had a dinner meeting with Stevens at the Special Mission, but gave him no warning of the danger as he departed through the gathering militia forces. Upon arriving, Stevens and Sean Smith went to bed, and one DSS officer manned the Tactical Operations Center with others around the compound, but without their gear or weapons, per Hillary Clinton's personal orders that weapons were to be kept in a separate building. Another inexplicable decision. At 21:23 hours, as dozens of attackers armed with machine guns, automatic rifles, and RPGs stormed the SMC, Alec Henderson, the Defense Operations Security Communications Officer, contacted the Annex, where the GRS team immediately grabbed gear, weapons, and asked the Chief of Base permission to go to Ambassador Stevens and the compound. The COB denied permission, told them stand down, while he tried to reach the 17 February Martyrs Brigade for help. They had the security contract after all. At 21:42 hours, Stevens phoned DCM Greg Hicks in Tripoli to tell him, "We're being attacked, requesting assistance." Henderson called the Annex again, requested help, but the COB refused to allow the GRS team to go the 3/4 miles into the compound. 10 minutes later, Henderson called again and said a building was on fire, and if no help arrives, quote, "we're all gonna die." But again, the Chief of Base refused for the third time to allow the GRS team to go. At 22:05, Tyrone Woods and 5 other GRS members with a Libyan national translator decided to ignore the COB orders and loaded into 2 Level 7 armored vehicles and drove to the compound. Diplomatic Security Service guard Scott Strickland, who was with Ambassador Stevens and Sean Smith, were inside a safe room, and he escaped through a barred window, but the car kept, per standard operating procedure, beneath the window for an escape and evasion was mysteriously not there. Stevens and Smith did not follow him out the window. At 2200, an unarmed Predator drone was diverted from a Derna mission to Bengazi by Africa Command J3, Director of Operations, and recorded the attack in real time. At 22:22 hours, the State Department Operations Center, Secretary of Defense Panetta, and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dempsey, including AFRICOM Commander General Ham, were all informed that U.S. mission in Benghazi was under attack. Panetta and Dempsey met with President Obama as Undersecretary of State Patrick Kennedy continually refused the repeated requests to send a Marine Corps Fleet anti-terrorism security team to Libya, while Secretary of State Clinton phoned CIA Director David Petraeus to coordinate. This was a ruse. At 2200, the GRS team cleared the compound of all attackers, and they located and removed Shot Smith's body from inside the building, which was still on fire. Also located and escorted out were 6 people, including DSS guards, found hiding in a safe room, but they were unable to locate Stevens. DSS guards told them that the 17 February Martyrs Brigade, responsible for security, had opened the compound gates, allowing the attackers in, and then many joined in the attack. Later, the CIA GRS arrived back at Annex under heavy fire, took up positions on rooftops, repelled multiple waves of attackers while remaining in constant secure communication over emergency channels with higher authority. At 23:30, former Navy SEAL Glenn Doherty, 2 members of the SST, and 2 United States Marines departed Tripoli in leased C-130, arriving in Benghazi Airport at 0130 local time on 12 September 2012, where they were delayed by terrorists in the streets for 3 hours before getting into the annex. At 0115, United States Department of Defense Chief of Staff Jeremy Bash sent an email to the DOS leadership immediately offering forces that could move to Benghazi. Quote, "We have identified the forces that could move to Benghazi. They are spinning up as we speak," end quote. F-16 fighters at Aviano Air Force Base in Italy, the 130-man USMC Fast Team at Sigonella Air Force Base, and the 10th Special Forces Group in Croatia were all alerted and available and ready to go. They were told to stand down, an order that could only come from the Commander-in-Chief, President Barack Obama. At 0200 hours on 12 February, DCM Greg Hicks spoke by phone with Secretary of State Clinton and her advisors and informed them that it was indeed a terrorist attack. But Clinton and Obama had immediately issued a State Department press release blaming a YouTube video for the attack, while Clinton withheld cross-border authority for a rescue. In most locations, that is called accessory to murder, or at the very least manslaughter. The least one could be charged with is dereliction of duty. The facts proved that the YouTube video was a lie. On 12 February 2012 at 0100 as well, Ambassador Stevens' body was found at the SMC by Libyan looters and taken to the Bengazi Medical Center, where doctors tried to revive him, but he was declared dead. At 0430, the Tripoli rescue team led by Doherty finally arrived at the CIA annex and joined into the fight, and Doherty took up a position on one annex building rooftop while others stayed below. At 0500, the final Ansar al-Sharia attack with mortars began. Ty Woods and Glenn Doherty were killed on the roof. DSS agent David Ubben, GRS Mark Geist Oz were gravely injured. At 0530, the Libyan rescue team finally arrived and the attack ended. The survivors, plus bodies of Stevens and Smith, departed Benghazi on a Libyan C-130, plus the leased C-130 from Tripoli. No U.S. military forces were ever sent to assist, and no official U.S. organization ever arrived at Benghazi through the entire night. They were left to die. That very day, the official White House State Department CIA cover-up began, and continues to this day. Multiple congressional investigations, the State Department's Accountability Review Board, and Representative Trey Gowdy's Select Committee on Bengazi have never explained why the U.S. supported the Libyan al-Qaeda and Muslim Brotherhood to overthrow Gaddafi, which is puzzling as Gaddafi was at that time an American ally against al-Qaeda in North Africa. They have never explained why the U.S. facilitated gun running to al-Qaeda in both Libya in 2011 and Syria in 2012, and why the Special Mission Compound in Bengazi was stripped of desperately needed security. They never explained why the Obama administration failed to pre-position forces even in the face of multiple warnings, with weeks of advance notice, and why the members of the Obama White House to this day still lead an official cover-up about the true cause of the attacks against the U.S. mission in Bengazi. They also never explained their failure to even attempt a rescue of beleaguered mission personnel that resulted in the deaths of 4 Americans, the loss of the mission, and the creation of a Libyan failed state and terrorist haven. What came out of this nightmare was the reality that if U.S. forces had arrived and located the American weapons that were given to the terrorists, it would have been a major political disaster for Barack Obama in his run for a second term as president. And forces were available. Both Marines and the 10th Special Forces Group were within a few hours of Benghazi. The F-16 strike force was not sent because of the fear that a U.S.-made SAM could have taken one down, thus heightening the horrific possibility of explaining to Congress and the American people why the Obama administration gave such high-tech weapons to the very terrorist group that they were fighting in Afghanistan. The cover-up started immediately, as Clinton, Susan Rice, and anyone with vocal cords hit all the network and cable shows, telling the world that the attack was the result of an anti-Islamic video spurring a spontaneous attack. The reality shows that this explanation was a lie. First, no spontaneous crowd arrives to protest with automatic and crew-served weapons. Second, the attack was well planned in advance because every mortar round from first to last hit the targets. There was no adjusting fire. Their mortarmen had pre-targeted the compound. Third, the very Islamic group subcontracted to maintain perimeter security turned out to be terrorists themselves, an inside job. The outright lunacy of this argument that a video started a spontaneous attack was compounded when the authorities arrested the maker of the video, an expatriate Egyptian Coptic Christian named Nakula Basli Nakula, whose short video, The Innocence of Muslims, was blamed, making him the fall guy for their own criminal activity and the cover-up. In essence, Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama allowed good men to die to cover up a bad political decision, then arrested and prosecuted an innocent man in violation of his First Amendment rights to cover it up. That was the main reason Clinton had to try and destroy all the emails maintained on her illegal server, in violation of the National Security Act, and then destroyed all communication devices despite a legal subpoena to retain them as evidence. The following seems to be quite clear. Gaddafi's death allowed the U.S. weapons in his custody to fall into terrorist hands, which would have been better than Gaddafi having to explain why he had them in the first place. The Obama and Clinton cabal knew of the attack well in advance. This is not debated, but they allowed it to happen and to cover up the fact that the weapons were there at all. Embarrassing for a president running for a second term, touting his positives in fighting the war on terror while supplying the same terrorists with high-tech weaponry. The attack was allowed to happen, possibly in the hope that there would be no survivors to tell the world what had been going on. That is the only explanation for the many inconsistencies and the stand-down orders as the compound was being attacked. However, Clinton's chief aide, Huma Abedin, still had all the email traffic on this and many other issues. They were found on Abedin's laptop when the FBI arrested her husband, former Representative Anthony Weiner, for child sexual stalking on the internet using the name Carlos Danger. The question now is, where is the Weiner Abedin laptop and all of that email evidence that was found? Only time will tell. Thank you for watching Forgotten